let's take a look at this beautiful study. I'll start by playing the study for you, and then we'll dive into all the structures that Saw is using. Okay, there we go. So there's study number 5. If you were listening through the whole time, you probably noticed there were quite a lot of repeats. Each little subsection is repeated, so it does result in a fairly lengthy little study here. And then we do repeat after we reach the end here. We repeat back to the beginning, go back to that sign there, and finish here where it says, hard to read here, but it says fine there, finish. So that's the form. Actually, that's a bit of a clue there. That is one section. So I always like to start with the bird's eye view of a piece. So we have the A section here. After the fine, there's usually the B section. We also have a key change. See the key signature change there. And then we go back to the A section. So if you know your form terminology, ABA is ternary form, where we have 3 parts, A section, a B section, and we return to the full A section. It's very, very common when we return to the A section, then rather than it being written out again, you'll see like a sign or a da capo DC or something like that. which saves, paper. So saves some space on the page. So that's the form. What I like to look at next are the keys, and there's actually not that much happening, surprisingly, in terms of keys. Usually Fernando saw would be changing keys a lot, but in this study, it did still enough to be very beautiful and interesting, but not as much as perhaps as some of the other studies we've looked at. So obviously the main keys we have A minor at the start here, with no sharps or flats in the key signature, heavy emphasis on A at the start and end of the section. And then we go to the parallel major, A major with the 3 sharps. And you can see the heavy emphasis on A again. A little trick with key signatures. So what you want to do is, with the key signature here, you take your last sharp in the key signature, in this case it's G, and you go up a letter. So you go to the last sharp. This only works for sharps. There's a different trick for flats. With the sharp keys, look at the last sharp, the one that's furthest, to the right. The last sharp in the signature, go up a step. So G is the last sharp, you go up a step, A major. If we had 2 sharps in the key signature, I'm sorry, this is a bit blurry, that would be a C. So we'd have F and C. So C would go up a step to D, it would be D major. If we had 1 sharp, which is F, we go up a step to G, and it's G major. And that actually works for all of the keys. So when you've got 4 sharps, we put the 4th sharp on D. So D goes up a step to E, it's E major. When we have 5 sharps, A goes up a step to B, it's B major. And when we have, heaven forbid, when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've already lost count of how many sharps, 6 sharps, which is when we have an E sharp, we go up a step and we are in F sharp major. So it works for all of them. I think the last one would be a B sharp, and that would be the key of C sharp major. But we rarely play music in those keys, thank goodness for that. So, all right, so we're in three sharps, we're in A major. Now what I tried to do, hopefully you noticed, I tried to, A major, I tried to make a difference in the mood between the A minor section and the A major section. So A minor, I was playing a bit more dramatic. Maybe not right at the beginning, but sort of like built up to a bit more of a dramatic feel, especially when I returned to the A section at the end. And the B section, I thought felt really nice and calm. The start of the B section I'm playing there. So really important, once you know the keys, you've identified the keys, don't stop there, go to the next step, which is, what is the meaning of the key? It is telling a story. What's the mood of each key? How do they contrast with each other? Because it's really like day and night, it's like yin and yang. They oppose each other. Key changes are not supposed to be close. They're not supposed to be homogeneous and like sounding the same. They're actually supposed to be opposing forces. A lot of the times I think we think like we see, keys that share the same key signature and we think, oh, they share the same key signature, they must be similar. In some ways they are, but in more ways they're actually different. They're meant to be different. Maybe in jazz and other styles they think about keys a bit differently, but in this kind of music, in this style, changing keys is a big deal. It's a big change. So just wanted to point that out. So whenever you find a key change, make sure you do something with that. Now, after we've looked at the form and the keys, I like to look at phrase structures, because there are only a couple of phrase structures really that are used a lot. There's the parallel periods and sentences, and Fernando Saw uses both of these phrase structures. So parallel period, a period is basically where we have 2 phrases, like question and an answer, and A parallel period is when the question and the answer start with the same material. So in the first 8 bars of this piece, which is actually the first section, I should actually go through this. We should say we should call this A1 and we should call this A2, just for clarification. So A1 is made of a parallel period. We have a question, and an answer starts the same as the question. The first 2 bars, and that's very typical. The first 2 bars of the question, the first 2 bars of the answer are the same as the first 2 bars of the question. Sometimes it's more. I mean, this is actually, technically it's 2.5 bars there. You can see these 3 notes are the same as those 3 notes there. So the first section, little subsection A1, is a parallel period. A2 is not a parallel period because we don't get the repeating structure. Instead, we get a 2-bar idea followed by another 2-bar idea, which is very similar. And then we get a longer idea, 4-bar idea. And so 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals a sentence. And sometimes you'll see it as 1 plus 1 plus 2. But the essence of it is a short, long. A short idea followed by another short idea followed by a longer idea. The short ideas sometimes they'll be exact repetitions of each other. Very often there'll be slight variations of each other. So we get this, and then very similar. So 2-bar idea, and another 2-bar idea. And I'm trying to do an echo in this case. Echo because it's, we just heard it. So either an echo or an increase in volume. You probably want to do something with it. The thing you don't want to do is play it exactly the same way. That would be my only sort of guideline. Don't play it the same as you've just played it here. So we get those 2 bars followed by these 2 bars, and then we get a longer idea. And here Saw does something interesting, which we'll talk about. So I'll go from this measure. So you're going from D minor to G, C to F, and then we're back. So what he's doing here is he's outlining the circle of fifths. So we're going from D to G. If you imagine the circle of fifths here, I'll try and draw a circle. We have C, and then G's next, and then if I can draw that, and then D is next, and then we're going to go this way. We're going to F counterclockwise from C. Okay, it's not the prettiest circle there, but so we're going from D to G to C to F, going around the circle. And that's how we're getting that beautiful kind of progression. And then we're going back to A minor from that F chord there. So, okay, so there's a really nice little contrast towards the end of the A section. If you want to learn more about this kind of stuff too, I'm going through this very quickly. I'm not explaining things in depth because otherwise we'll be here for hours. But a lot of this is available on the Creative Classical Guitarist, where we talk about modular. We spend there's many hours and books and pages and exercises on chord substitutions and modulations and seventh chords and triads and phrase structures and everything. So all right, so that's our A section. So we have a parallel period in the first section, question and answer mirroring each other in the key of A minor. And then the A2 section, we get a sentence phrase, which is a short, long. And in the long part of that sentence, we get a little cycle of fifths or cycle of fourths. If we're going counterclockwise, it's a cycle of fourths. If we're going on the circle, if we're going that way, we're going by fourths. If we go this way, clockwise, we're going up by fifths. So next section is where we change key. We go to A major. Now this is really neat. So Fernando Saw combines a parallel period with a sentence, which is not something you see very often, but it does happen. So we go short, yeah, this bar, and then short idea. So 1 plus 1 plus 2 this time, and here's this 2-bar idea. And we go back to the original idea there, and then again a repeat of that bar, and then something different to finish there. So we're getting a combination of a sentence. We're getting this 1 plus 1 plus 2, creating a question, and then Saw repeats it as the answer. 1 plus 1, and then the 2-bar idea is a little bit different to finish us off for that section. So that would be B1. That's a lot of annotations on this score. B1 there. So that would make the next section B2. And we get a similar thing here. We're getting a short idea, 1-bar idea, and then a 2-bar idea. Oops. And then same thing again. So it's a combination of a sentence and a parallel period again. So short, short, long, short, short, long, and framing it as a question and an answer, parallel period. Now, Saw in the answer here throws in an unexpected note, a D sharp. So whenever we see a accidental, it's especially if it's like not just a passing one, but it seems significant, then we need to think about what's going on. So this is called a passing modulation or tonicization, where we borrow a chord from another key in order to momentarily establish a new tonic. So we're going to, let me try to explain that a bit more. We're going to the key of E for a moment. So we're borrowing a chord from the key of E to take us to that key. Excuse me. And I like to call these gateway chords. This is our goal, this is our destination, and this is our gateway chord, the one that comes in before it. And that gateway chord is the dominant of the key we're going to. So this B is the dominant of E. It's the 5th chord of E. So this is the trick with key changes, and it doesn't really get much more complicated than this when you're studying Bach's Chaconne or Fugues by Bach or Saw's studies. When you see key changes, a lot of the like internal key changes similar to this, tonicizations, passing modulations, the underlying technique that's happening is this: use the dominant chord of the key you're going to. It's, if you know your 5 ones, you can go, C major is 1, G is 5. If you can do that for every key, you will be very fluent with understanding modulations. So it really doesn't get much more complicated in classical common practice harmony. So okay, so we're going from the 5th to the 1st momentarily, and then this E becomes the dominant of our original key A. We're in the key of A major. So we get this beautiful kind of progression. I'll play from the start of the line. Oops. And back. All right. Now, interestingly also, Saw is pedaling this E, so we get this nice kind of harmonic clash between. Right, that's a kind of quite a baroque, sort of technique there, pedal bass. So you get this nice kind of, E7 with the E in the bass, and then A with E in the bass, and then B7 with E in the bass, and then E again with E in the bass, and then we return A major, and now we're returning to B1. as well. So you might recognize some music from earlier. And then we finish with something a little bit different here, but it's still the same phrase structure, 1 + 1 + 2. Excuse me. So now this is an interesting little feature as well in the B section. We went B1, B2, and then we saw a return of B1. There's a repeat sign here which takes us back to the start of B2. So the B section, this is called nested form. The B section, we go B1, B2, brackets, B1. We end the B2 section with part of B1. So the B section has a nested form, which means it's got form within form, and this is called rounded binary. So Fernando Saw has put rounded binary into the B section, if that makes sense. So we get ternary form overall, but the B section is rounded binary. Okay, and then we return back to the A section, go back to A minor to finish. So it's telling a beautiful story through the keys, all tied together with these phrase structures. Music is very rarely unstructured. It's, in fact, the closer you look at music, usually the more structure you'll find. We've just talked about phrases. You could also say the same thing for rhythm. There's only a very, very small, limited number of rhythms that are used in this study, just like most pieces of music will use a fairly limited set of rhythms. So lots of structure in the form and the phrases. So the final thing I want to talk about are the harmonies. So when it comes to harmony, I think identifying chords can feel really overwhelming, but there is a really simple framework to always think about, to always consider, which is called the primary chords. The primary chords are chords 1, 4, and 5. So I've got them over here. A minor is 1 in the key of A minor. 4 is D minor, if it's A, B, C, D, and 5 will be E. The primary chords are very special because they contain all of the notes of the scale. If you take the triads of each chord, so A, C, E, and then D, F, A, and then E, G sharp, and B. So if we reordered that, we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. So we've got all the notes of the scale. That's why it's partly why the primary chords are so commonly used. So you could just play those: A minor, D minor, E. You probably hear, if I play those and I play the first 4 bars, A minor, D, E, A minor. So not only is Saw using the primary chords, he's actually using them in order: 1, 4, 5, 1. And that's extremely common. If you've watched any of other analysis videos I've done, I've probably mentioned it before and said, here's 1, 4, 5, 1 in order. 1, 4, 5, 1. Tears in Heaven. Mostly uses 1, 4, 5, 1. I've talked about that. Another piece by this one, very common, Spanish Romance. 1, 4, 5, 1, 5, 1. So that whole piece is made up of another one by Francisco Tarragas. 1, 4, 5, 1. So hopefully you're catching the idea. It's a very, very common framework, harmonic framework that you find just in just about every piece of, like common practice, like kind of harmony, classical sort of music. Yeah, so primary chords are what we're looking out for. The bass line gives us a clue. We have A here, and then D, and then E. So it's A, D, E, A. So the bass line is often the foundation of the harmony. So it's giving us a clue, and then we get parallel periods, so same bass line A, D, E, and finishing on E there. And then here we have E in the bass, so it's an E chord. It changes chord here to A minor, so it's 5, 1, E, 5, back to A minor, 1. We get our cycle of fifths or cycle of fourths there, and then we go back to primary chords, pretty much D, E, A. So the primary chords have explained, aside from this little portion here, the primary chords have given us a framework to follow. And then in the B section, look at the bass line. A, E, 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 A, E, E, A. So it's only 2 chords, which out of the primary chords, the most common ones, the most fundamental ones are the 1 and the 5, A and E in this case. So why is that? Well, I could explain that a long time, but I think it has to do with the harmonic series. So if we play the harmonic series, which is represented by harmonics on the string on the guitar, the halfway point on a string is an octave. The next halfway point on a string, which is also the next note in the harmonic series, is the 5th. So it's closely related to the fundamental note. So when we play a note, like E, for example, that note's made up of other notes as well, and they get kind of like weaker and weaker as you go up the series. So the closer the overtone is to the fundamental note, the more it influences the fundamental note, if that makes sense. So the dominant the 5th has quite an influence on the fundamental. So that's, anyway. So B section, mostly just A's and E's. A, the tonic, E, the dominant. B1, and then when we go to B2, same thing, really, except when we get here, which we've talked about already, it's the gateway chord taking us to E for a moment, so a borrowed chord. I should say gateway chord is not a common term. That's kind of my made up term. The more like formal terms for this would be applied chord or borrowed chord or secondary dominant, something like that, if you've heard those terms before. So, and then we return to B1, which is pretty much the same. A, E, A, E, A, D. That's our first D in the B section. It's our first subdominant, our first 4 chord in the whole B section. So when we get there, it's kind of like, we kind of feel like, this is really nice, Yeah. And it happens to be, I think, one of the highest notes too. So it really feels like a breath of fresh air. And then we wind down and we go back to A minor. So I think that wraps it up there. So we could talk about other things, but that's usually my kind of 3-layer analysis. So I start with the big picture, the keys, and the sections. So how many sections are there? What key is each section in? I'm talking big sections first, then look at the subsections. So you're starting with your bird's eye view, gradually zooming in. Then you can look at your phrase structure. So each section will usually be made of certain phrase structures like parallel periods and sentences. They'll usually be made up of 4s and groups of 4s and 8s as well. And then once you've done that, look for the harmony. And when you're looking for harmony, look for the primary chords 1, 4, and 5. If you do that, if you follow those 3 sort of steps there, those 3 layers, you'll probably get a pretty good grasp, good understanding of most guitar pieces that you're playing. So let me know if there are any guitar pieces you'd like me to analyze, and we'll continue this next week with number 6, saw study number 6 from Op.60. So I hope you enjoyed that and learned something interesting. Saw's music is really like a gold mine. It's really, even when it's extremely simple, there's a lot to unpack. So hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Any questions? Oh, okay. Thanks, guys. Michael, 2 Michaels in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. I play with legato, and the instrument sounds good. Thank you. Well, this instrument is made by a local Australian maker, Roger Lee, and it's built in the style of a Smallman, Greg Smallman guitar, lattice braced guitar. So it does help when the instrument has a bit of that resonance and stuff to it. So yeah, but I guess from a playing, you've mentioned legato, Michael Ramirez. Legato, yeah, it's really important. It's one of the ways I like to teach legato is it's really important to, it might sound obvious, but it's really important to connect the decay of one note to the attack of the next note. So for example, we play the first note, this A, this open A, that's going to decay, and then, and we also not only connect the decay with the attack of the next note, but you want to hear, if possible, if you have the time, you want to hear the decay of both notes together. That's a really great legato. If you got, so if I play the 3 notes, we have 3 notes decaying all at the same time, if that makes sense. Okay, so because this is focused on the A minor harmony, I'm not too concerned about too much legato, because sometimes you can have too much legato, like notes can ring and they might clash with each other. But these notes will ring together harmoniously because they're part of the same harmony. So if I leave that bar, if I don't go on to the next bar, if I just leave it hanging, you can hear, hopefully you can hear that, the decay going on, and then I'll try to connect all of those beautiful resonances with the next note. But I don't want it to be, I want to control it at the same time. So this A in the bass, I actually want to cut it at this point. So that the harmonic transition, the transition to the new harmony is clean. All right, so legato is, it's a really, there's a lot of refinement and listening involved in it. It's not just necessarily we want to play legato all the time. It's a control of the legato. So, but that could, I could talk about that for a long time too. But hopefully that's something that will help you in your practice, Michael.